Hello, researchers. Malcolm Shambana is my name. I again to take you in research methods, and today we are looking at your research methodology, which is usually your chapter 3 in your research or dissertation or thesis. This part of the research is where now it's a doing part where you mention what you have done or what you're planning to do. So sit back and enjoy the recording. You can take your drink and relax as I present to you research methods. Thank you. So, to present to you today's topic, my name is Malcolm Shambana. You can reach out for me on that line 0977 But if you are trying to reach me from outside Zambia, you need to include the code which is +260. So we will start, you will just include to that number, just include +26. So it becomes +260 977 488 442. You can subscribe to my channel for if in case you want to see other videos or any receive notification of any videos, new videos from myself. Subscribe to my channel. Just search for me. I'll share the link later on, but you can still search for Malcolm Shambana at YouTube. You'll find my account there. You can subscribe so that you can be watching more of my videos and we can interact more. So today our learning objective is to ensure that you understand what research methodology is, the research theories or philosophies involved in your methodologies, those that bring up the build up or the approach of how you are going to conduct your research or how you have already conducted your research. I'm speaking in terms of maybe at proposal stage or at completion stage. So that's why I'm saying your approach, how you are going to conduct or how you have already conducted your research. Also, we are going to look at approaches to research, specific approaches to researchers within your methodology. We are also going to look at research methods. We are going to look at compare qualitative and versus quantitative, those two approaches. We are going to look at also your mixed methods, which is a combination of the qualitative and quantitative methods. So, what is research methodology? Research methodology has been defined by, I picked this definition from University of Witwatersrand. That's, I think this is a South African university. It says, the specific procedures or techniques used to identify, select, process, and analyze information about a topic. So it's the specification of steps you are going to take or processes you are going to use to analyze information you are going to gather about a particular topic. Methodology explains to the readers of your research what data was collected or will be collected in case of a proposal, where the data was collected from, or where the data is going to be collected from in case of a proposal, how data was collected, how data was analyzed, or how data will be analyzed in case of a proposal. It is important that the researcher justifies all the steps taken. Every action you are taking under a research has to be explained to the users of that research report or the readers of that research report. It's very critical that you justify why you have picked this method, not the other, or why have you picked both methods, or why have you used this maybe statistical approach or theoretical approach? You need to justify, give reasons or why you have picked from a particular population. And some justification may be basic. It may be maybe as a result of maybe you're looking at the cost constraints. Maybe you're unable to fund beyond what you have picked as your maybe your population or your sample. It can be also maybe the area in which you are comfortable with, maybe the way what you understand, but you need to justify why you have taken a particular direction or a particular step. It's very important in a research in a research methodology that you justify all the steps you are using in the research. We move on. There are two types of approaches to research. There is inductive and deductive. These it's important that you understand these approaches and it will help you design your methodology depending on your research topic. Looking at your research topic, you need to understand what methods you are using and what results you expect. So, the inductive approach begins with a question, collects empirical data, generates a hypothesis and a theory. This is mainly used in a qualitative research. In theory, I'll come and explain properly the qualitative and quantitative, but you need to understand first these approaches, and then I'll combine them at the end. There is also a deductive approach. It begins with a theory. That's where the inductive approach left. It begins with a theory and hypothesis and tests the theory and hypothesis and makes a confirmation if that theory or hypothesis is true or false. Take your time. You need to research on these two approaches. It will make you clearly design your research methodology if you understand these concepts. So, in your own spare time, just go through, understand the difference between inductive approach and deductive approach. We move on to the next slide where we will discuss this. We will go into details of qualitative and quantitative methods. Before we move to the methods, we need to understand the link between the philosophies and approaches. Positivism, which relies on measurement of the subject, is linked to the deductive approach, which also requires measurement of the subject and is usually employed by people studying natural science. Interpretivism, which requires interpretation of theories, is linked to the inductive approach, which also requires interpretation of a theory and is mainly used by those studying social sciences. So you need to understand why we have brought in the issue of philosophy and approach and the science which one is studying. So you need to know the science which you are studying and the approach which you need to use and the philosophy which is behind that approach. So these are also linked to the method which you are going to select. Sometimes they can even be mixed depending on the stages. We will go into details of how they can be mixed, But as for now, let's go to the methods. There are three main types of research methods: is qualitative, quantitative, and mixed method. You need to understand these three types. Those are mainly which you can mainly use in your uh, research paper or your dissertation or your thesis. Unless there are other methods, but these are the three main types. We look at the differences and the comparative between the qualitative and quantitative methods. So we can approach that understanding by use of a table, of which in the first column I've indicated the purpose, the activity involved, the data type, the approach, and the analysis type. So in qualitative method, you are answering the question why. Why is such a case? Why do we have gender-based violence in Zambia? And then in quantitative method, you are asking how much? How much is the impact of drought? You are looking in terms of figures. How much is the impact of drought on the Zambian economy? How much has the inflation increased or dropped due to drought? You are also looking at what type of activities under qualitative methods. The activity which you're mainly going to be involved in is exploring people's perception, ideas, and feeling. For example, you are inquiring on the perception of gender-based violence. You can also inquire on the perception of drought. Let me not restrict drought to quantitative method. I can also throw it in qualitative method. You can inquire from people, what ideas people have on drought or irrigation. When it comes to quantitative, you are trying now to measure the relationship between drought and inflation, or drought and interest rate. Definitely, you have to the drought. You have to convert it into numbers, numeric value, or maybe you look at the quantity of rain in a particular period and the inflation in a particular period, or quantity of rain in a particular period and how the economic grew in a particular period. There now you have gone quantitative. The data type under qualitative uses words, whereas the data type under quantitative uses numerals, numbers, percentages, statistical figures. The approach under qualitative method is to observe and interpret, which is inductive. Whereas the approach under quantitative is to measure and test, which is deductive. The type of analysis under qualitative you can use, there are several. An example which is given there is thematic. You look at the theme. You can have several words, meaning responses under qualitative, and they may appear different, but you as a researcher, you need to come up with themes, summarizing meaning. so that data can easily be compared. We'll go into details in another session, not this time, regarding thematic or qualitative analysis. Same as quantitative, the approach is statistical. We'll also go into details in a different session, how you can statistically analyze your quantitative data. So those are the differences between qualitative and quantitative methods. So you need to understand your purpose. First, you need to, let me begin from the philosophy. What's your philosophy? Do you believe in observing and measuring and getting real natural data? Or you believe in gathering information from people's perspective, feelings, ideas? So you need to understand your approach. Which approach is practical? And it all takes us back to analyzing your research topic, your aims, your research questions, for you to decide which method you are going to use. So now we discuss the link between the approaches and your methods. Though I touched on that a bit, but now I need to illustrate how they are linked. Your approaches and your methods. There is a inductive approach and deductive approach, and then your methods are qualitative and quantitative, and sometimes mixed. But at the moment, we are looking at quantitative and qualitative. So inductive method, like we discussed, starts from the question, why do we have gender-based violence? Then there is observation, interpretation from from the interview with the people, why we have gender-based violence in Zambia. Then there is coming up with a theory. From what you have gathered, how you have interviewed, you are going to put it in themes. You use a thematic, for example, thematic approach. You summarize how people have responded to your question regarding the causes of gender-based violence in Zambia. Then from there, you have moved from question, you have made an observation, and you have done your interpretation, which is an interpretivism approach. That's a theory you're using. Definitely, the method you are going to use is qualitative, or the method which you have used is qualitative. And then you move to deductive method. From theory, deductive method begins from where you left in qualitative method. So deductive method, you are going to move from theory. You are going to test that theory, measure or that theory. The theory already exists. Measure or test that theory. Then you are going to confirm if that theory is correct. That approach or that method which you need to use under deductive approach is quantitative. This is how these are linked. So the inductive approach, which is linked to interpretivism, is linked to your qualitative method. And then the deductive approach, which is linked to positivism, which involves measurements, getting the actual fact, the real fact, not from a human being, an objective approach, is linked to your positivism, and is usually quantitative method is employed in such a case. We move on. We have discussed the qualitative method, also discussed the quantitative method and we compared the two. Now we come to the mixed method. The mixed method is actually a combination of those two approaches, the methods rather. It uses both methods to come up with a conclusion on the subject. Mixed method can use qualitative method to develop a hypothesis and a theory. And once that hypothesis is developed and the theories are developed, quantitative method is used to test those theories developed qualitatively. I'm sure this relates to us to the diagram which I showed you in the previous slide. In your own time, you can go back to that slide. So the starting point is from question, you go to observation and interpretation, then you come up with a hypothesis and theory, and then that theory is tested numerically, measured to confirm if that theory is correct or wrong. Then you have used a mixed method. You have extended your method from qualitative to quantitative. However, this is not restricted in this direction. The direction can also come from quantitative to qualitative. Mixed method can use quantitative approach to develop a research question. For example, if there is a theory, or you begin with a theory, you test your numbers. For example, you find that there is in Zambia 45% are men. Then now you go into details by asking maybe the citizen what causes or what has led to men being 45% only instead of 50-50. Then the theories will come up from that approach. Then you come up again with a hypothesis, maybe stating that men in Zambia are 45% because they die at an early age, whatsoever theory you may come up with. So that approach, you are coming from quantitative. You did your mathematics, you counted the people, the population. You were dealing with numerals. Then you came up with a percentage. Now, the approach, now the question is, why do we have such a percentage? Then you have moved from quantitative to qualitative in a mixed method way. It's very interesting that most of research, they usually involves both uh, numerals and just words. Both numerals and words, rather. So the approach which you choose basically depends on your research topic, then comes to your research aim and what you are trying to achieve at the end of the day. So, in summary, you need to explain why you have used a particular method, why you have used a particular approach, why you have used a particular type of analysis. What's key in your methodology is justifying the steps you have taken. It has to make sense to the one reading your methodology. There are several items which I haven't included because I wanted to concentrate on the key elements. The items like the scope, maybe your study population, maybe your sample size. We'll go into details of those once we start discussing the approaches used, be it statistical or thematic, because those are sessions, separate sessions on their own. Thank you for watching this video. You can subscribe to the account so that you can be receiving notification if I produce new videos. And you can also like the video if you enjoyed it and if it has made sense to you. Thank you very much.